Welcome to Learn English with Sara. Today's story will help you not only improve your English, but also inspire you to live more intentionally. We're going to learn through a meaningful story about how to make every day productive, balanced, and full of purpose. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. There was once a young woman named Emily who always felt like her days slipped away too quickly. She would wake up full of motivation, yet by evening she often wondered where her time had gone. Her phone notifications distracted her. Her to-do list seemed endless, and no matter how hard she worked, she felt unfulfilled. One night after scrolling through her phone far longer than she intended, Emily sighed and said to herself, "There must be a better way to live." That simple thought marked the beginning of her journey to rediscover time, focus, and purpose. The next morning, Emily decided to start differently. Instead of checking her phone, she took out a small notebook and wrote, "Today, I will take control of my time." She listed just 3 important things she wanted to complete: finishing a report for work, cleaning her study space, and going for a short walk in the park. When she looked at the simple list, she felt calm and determined. That morning, she brewed a cup of tea, opened her laptop, and began working on her report. She set a timer for 1 hour and promised herself she wouldn't check her phone until the time was up. The first few minutes were hard. Her hand almost reached for her phone out of habit, but soon she found herself deeply focused. When the timer beeped, she was surprised to see how much she had finished. For the first time in weeks, she felt proud of her progress. Encouraged, Emily decided to take short, mindful breaks between her work sessions. She stretched, walked around her small apartment, and even opened the window to breathe fresh air. She realized that productivity wasn't about working nonstop. It was about balancing effort and rest. Later that afternoon, she went for a walk in the park, listening to the sound of birds and the soft rustle of leaves. Her thoughts were clear, and she felt a quiet satisfaction that came not from doing more, but from doing what truly mattered. That evening, Emily sat at her desk again, this time to reflect. She wrote, "What helped me today?" and listed a few simple things: making a plan, avoiding distractions, and rewarding herself with small breaks. Then she added, "Tomorrow I'll do it again." Over the next few days, she began to design her own productivity system. Each night before bed, she wrote a short plan for the next day. Each morning, she began with the most important task first. She learned to separate her day into focused blocks of time: one for deep work, one for small tasks, one for learning, and one for rest. As she practiced this routine, Emily began to notice something new. Her mornings were peaceful. Her afternoons felt lighter. Even her evenings became more joyful because she no longer carried the heavy guilt of unfinished tasks. She also began to understand that being productive was not just about completing tasks, it was about creating a meaningful rhythm in life. Some days her plans didn't go perfectly. Unexpected calls or urgent messages would interrupt her. But instead of getting frustrated, she learned to adapt. She told herself, "It's okay. Progress, not perfection." Those words became her quiet mantra. One afternoon, while organizing her desk, Emily found an old sticky note that said, "Dream big, but act small every day." She smiled. That phrase perfectly captured her new philosophy. Big goals could only be reached through small, consistent actions. She began applying this principle to every part of her life. When learning English, for example, she studied just 5 new words each morning. When exercising, she walked for 20 minutes daily instead of waiting for free time to do long workouts. Little by little, she built strong habits that shaped her days with purpose. Soon, Emily noticed she was not just getting more done, she was becoming calmer and more confident. She spent less time comparing herself to others, and more time focusing on what truly mattered to her. Every evening, she took 10 minutes to review her progress. She asked herself, what went well today? What can I improve tomorrow? This simple reflection helped her grow steadily without pressure. It reminded her that self-awareness was just as important as discipline. Emily also learned the power of saying no. When friends asked her to join activities that didn't align with her priorities, she politely declined, saying, "I really want to, but I have something important to finish." She realized that protecting her time wasn't selfish, it was an act of self-respect. Each decision to stay focused made her stronger. By the end of the first month, Emily had transformed her daily life. Her days no longer felt chaotic. She had time to work, learn, rest, and enjoy quiet moments without guilt. She smiled more, slept better, and even found joy in simple routines like making tea or organizing her workspace. Through her journey, she discovered that productivity was not about doing everything, it was about doing the right things at the right time with a peaceful heart. Over the following weeks, Emily's new habits began to feel natural, almost effortless. Each morning she woke up at 7:00 a.m., opened her curtains, and smiled at the gentle light entering her room. She spent 10 quiet minutes stretching, breathing deeply, and thinking about what she was grateful for. Then she would brew a cup of coffee, sit at her desk, and open her planner. She always started her day with her most important task before checking emails or social media. This simple change transformed her mornings completely. Her focus sharpened, her mood lifted, and she no longer felt like time was slipping away from her. One morning while working on a report for her company, Emily noticed how easy it was to lose focus. Her phone buzzed with messages, her email notifications kept appearing, and she could feel her attention drifting. Remembering her goal, she switched her phone to silent mode and closed unnecessary tabs on her computer. She told herself, "For the next 45 minutes, I will do only this." She worked with calm determination, writing one sentence after another. When her timer rang, she had completed more than she usually did in 2 hours. She smiled, realizing how powerful focus could be when she gave it her full attention. Inspired, Emily decided to learn about different productivity techniques. She came across something called the Pomodoro technique, which suggested working for 25 minutes and then taking a 5-minute break. She tried it that same afternoon. She set a timer focused completely for 25 minutes and then rewarded herself with a short walk around her apartment. It was surprisingly effective. The short bursts of concentration kept her mind sharp, and the breaks helped her avoid burnout. By evening, she had finished all her planned work and still had energy to spare. It felt like magic, but it was really just structure, discipline, and kindness toward herself. That night, Emily reflected on how her mindset had changed. In the past, she had believed that productivity meant working endlessly, checking off as many tasks as possible, and staying busy all the time. Now she understood that true productivity meant balance. It meant being intentional, choosing what truly mattered, and letting go of what didn't. She wrote in her journal, "Productivity is peace, not pressure." That sentence became her daily reminder. As days passed, Emily began applying these principles to every area of her life. She started planning her meals ahead of time to save mental energy during busy days. She also created a weekly schedule that included time for learning English, exercising, reading, and socializing. Instead of trying to do everything every day, she distributed her tasks throughout the week. For example, Mondays were for deep work, Tuesdays for creative projects, Wednesdays for study and reflection, and weekends for rest and connection. This rhythm made her days feel organized yet flexible. One Friday afternoon, Emily's friend Lily called and invited her out for a spontaneous shopping trip. Emily had just started an important report that was due the next morning. A few months earlier, she would have agreed immediately and stayed up late to finish her work afterward. But this time she took a deep breath and said kindly, "I'd love to, but I really need to finish this today. Let's go tomorrow morning instead." Lily understood and agreed. Emily hung up the phone feeling proud. It wasn't easy to say no, but she realized that protecting her focus was an act of self-discipline and respect for her goals. That evening, after finishing her report ahead of schedule, Emily rewarded herself with a relaxing walk in the park. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. As she walked, she thought about how far she had come. A few months ago, she often felt overwhelmed, distracted, and frustrated with herself. Now she felt calm and confident. She wasn't perfect. Some days were still messy, but she had learned how to recover quickly, how to forgive herself, and how to begin again. As she watched the last light fade behind the trees, Emily whispered, "Productivity isn't about doing more, it's about living better." That realization filled her with quiet joy. She knew that she would still face challenges, but she also knew she now had the tools to manage them. With a clear mind and a grateful heart, she walked home ready to rest and begin again the next day. That night, Emily wrote one final line in her journal before bed. Small habits create big changes. She didn't need to chase perfection anymore. She just needed to stay consistent, stay kind to herself, and keep moving forward one day at a time. The next morning, Emily woke up feeling rested and full of purpose. The sunlight slipped gently through her curtains, and she smiled as she stretched her arms. Her life was far from perfect, but for the first time in years, she felt in control of her time. She got out of bed at 7:00 a.m., made her bed neatly, and went through her quiet morning routine, a glass of water, 10 minutes of light exercise, and a few deep breaths to calm her mind. Then she sat at her desk and reviewed her daily plan. Her list was simple work on the new presentation from 8:00 a.m. to 10:00 a.m., check emails at 10:15 a.m., and take a short walk before lunch. In the afternoon, she planned to study English for 30 minutes, and then meet a friend for coffee. Everything was structured yet flexible. It gave her direction but also space to breathe. Emily had also begun tracking her habits using a small notebook. Every evening she marked a check for each habit she completed, waking up early, taking breaks, exercising, and learning something new. Over time, the pages filled with neat rows of check marks, and seeing them gave her a deep sense of satisfaction. The progress was visible, and that visibility became her motivation. One small check a day, she told herself, builds a life of consistency. While working on her presentation that morning, Emily decided to use a technique she had recently learned: deep work. It meant focusing intensely on one task without any distractions. She put her phone on airplane mode, turned off email notifications, and closed her door. For 2 full hours, she worked with pure concentration. The words flowed smoothly, ideas connected clearly, and when she finally stopped, she felt mentally alive. It amazed her how much she could achieve in a short time when she gave something her full attention. After finishing, she took her notebook and reflected, "Deep work makes me feel peaceful. I don't rush, I don't multitask, I just do one thing well." That became another personal rule she lived by. Later that day, Emily went for her daily walk. The air was cool, the sky soft and blue. As she walked, she thought about how much energy she had now that she wasn't constantly multitasking. She realized that mental rest was just as important as physical activity. When she got home, she prepared a light lunch and allowed herself to rest for 20 minutes before returning to her next task. In the afternoon, she practiced English, something she had always wanted to improve, but never found time for. She listened to a podcast and repeated phrases out loud, focusing on pronunciation. Learning English had once felt like a heavy goal, but now with her new mindset, it became enjoyable. She realized that learning a language was much like building productivity. It wasn't about speed, but about consistency. A few words a day practiced sincerely could lead to real mastery over time. That evening, Emily met her friend Lily for coffee. Lily noticed something different. "You seem calmer," she said, "and happier too." "What's your secret?" Emily laughed softly. "I stopped trying to do everything. I just do what matters most, one thing at a time." Lily nodded, impressed. "That's harder than it sounds." "It is," Emily admitted. "But it's also freeing. I used to fill my days with noise messages, endless tasks, and constant rushing. Now I fill them with meaning. It's strange. I actually get more done when I do less." The two friends talked for hours about goals, routines, and dreams. Emily shared her favorite lessons, planning ahead, taking breaks, reflecting daily, and saying no when needed. Lily listened carefully, and by the end of their conversation, she decided to try some of Emily's methods herself. When Emily returned home that night, she felt grateful. She realized that her journey toward productivity had become more than personal growth. It was something she could share with others. She wasn't just managing her time anymore. She was inspiring people around her to live more intentionally. Before bed, she opened her journal again. Today she wrote, "I helped someone take their first step toward balance. That makes me proud." She smiled as she closed her notebook, turned off the light, and whispered to herself, "Tomorrow will be another good day." The next morning, Emily woke up with a quiet sense of determination. Each sunrise now felt like a fresh page, a new chance to live meaningfully, to learn and to grow. She knew that life would still bring distractions and difficulties, but she was no longer afraid of them. She had learned how to focus, how to rest, and most importantly, how to start again no matter what. As autumn arrived, Emily's days took on a steady rhythm that felt both peaceful and purposeful. The morning light filtered through her window at 7:00 a.m., and she woke naturally, no longer depending on her alarm. Her mornings were sacred quiet time to prepare her mind before the world demanded her attention. She would write 3 sentences in her gratitude journal, stretch gently, and sip her tea while reviewing her day's priorities. Those few calm minutes gave her a sense of control and peace that lasted all day. Her focus had become so strong that even her colleagues began to notice. At work, Emily no longer rushed from one task to another. Instead, she approached each project with patience and structure. She used a new system she called the 3-2-1 focus. Each morning she wrote down 3 main tasks she wanted to complete, 2 smaller errands, and 1 personal act of care. That could be something as simple as taking a walk, calling her parents, or reading for pleasure. It reminded her that life wasn't only about working, it was also about living well. One day her manager approached her after a meeting. "Emily, your reports have been excellent lately," he said. "You've become one of our most reliable team members." She smiled a little surprised. "Thank you, I've just been trying to stay organized." He nodded approvingly. "Whatever you're doing, keep it up." That evening, Emily reflected on that moment. The recognition felt good, but what truly made her happy was knowing she had achieved it without sacrificing her peace. She had finally found a balance between ambition and rest, a state she once thought impossible. As her confidence grew, Emily began helping her coworkers become more productive too. She shared simple tips like planning the night before, working in focused sessions, and setting realistic goals. She told them how she broke down big tasks into smaller steps, and how that had changed everything for her. Her calm, encouraging attitude soon made her a quiet mentor in the office. One afternoon, her colleague Nathan confessed, "I keep trying to be productive, but I end up feeling more stressed. What am I doing wrong?" Emily smiled kindly. "Maybe you're trying to do too much at once," she said. "Focus on what really matters each day. You don't have to win every battle, just move forward one small step at a time." Nathan nodded slowly, clearly thinking about her words. One step at a time. I like that. The truth was, Emily had learned that lesson through her own struggles. There were still days when her focus drifted, or her motivation dropped. Sometimes she overslept or spent too long scrolling through her phone. But instead of feeling guilty, she treated those moments with compassion. "It's okay," she would whisper to herself. "Tomorrow is another chance." This gentle self-kindness was what kept her consistent. Over the next few months, Emily also learned to manage her energy, not just her time. She discovered that her concentration peaked between 8:00 a.m. and 11:00 a.m., so she reserved that time for her most important tasks. After lunch, when her energy dipped, she used that time for lighter activities like answering emails or organizing her notes. By aligning her work with her natural energy levels, she got more done in fewer hours and felt less drained by the end of the day. One rainy afternoon, Emily sat by her window with her journal and reflected on her journey. She realized that productivity had once meant pressure, perfectionism, and endless lists. Now it meant peace, balance, and purpose. It was no longer about doing more, but about living consciously, being fully present in whatever she was doing. Whether she was working, reading, or resting, she gave it her full attention. That evening, she received a message from Lily. "I tried your method this week, planning my tasks and saying no to distractions. It really works. I feel more relaxed and actually finished everything I needed." Emily smiled at her phone. It warmed her heart to know that her experience was helping others. She replied, "I'm so happy to hear that. Remember small steps every day. That's the secret." Before going to bed, Emily lit a small candle on her desk and whispered softly, "Thank you for this day." It had become a nightly ritual, a moment of gratitude for progress, no matter how small. She knew she still had much to learn, but she also knew that the path she was walking, steady, mindful, and kind, was exactly where she was meant to be. As she drifted to sleep that night, Emily realized something beautiful. She had transformed not just her schedule but her entire mindset. Productivity was no longer a task to chase. It was a way to live with clarity, intention, and heart. Winter came quietly, and with it a slower rhythm to life. Emily found herself enjoying the calmness of early mornings even more. The world outside was still dark at 7:00 a.m., and her small lamp cast a warm glow over her desk. As she sipped her tea, she reviewed her day's plan and felt a sense of contentment she hadn't known in years. Life was still busy, but it was no longer overwhelming. She had learned to guide her time instead of letting it guide her. Her routines had become second nature. She began her work at 8:00 a.m., always starting with her most important task before checking messages or emails. Between 10:00 a.m. and 10:15 a.m., she took her first break, stretching, refilling her cup, and breathing deeply by the window. These small pauses had become her way of respecting both her body and her mind. They reminded her that productivity wasn't about constant motion, but about steady progress and balance. At lunch, Emily often walked to a nearby cafe with her notebook. She liked the quiet hum of people around her, students typing on laptops, friends chatting softly, baristas calling out orders. It was comforting, a reminder that everyone was busy building their own lives in their own way. Sometimes she would write short reflections during these breaks. One of them read, "Productivity is not about being faster. It's about being present with what truly matters." Her colleagues continued to notice the difference in her. One day, her team leader asked her to share her methods at a small office workshop. At first, Emily hesitated. "I'm not an expert," she said modestly. But her leader replied, "You don't need to be. You've made real changes, people can learn from that." So she agreed. The next week she stood in front of her coworkers, her hands slightly trembling but her heart full of sincerity. "A year ago she began, I thought productivity meant doing more. I worked harder, stayed up later, and checked my phone constantly. But instead of feeling accomplished, I felt tired and frustrated. Then I realized something simple: productivity is not about time. It's about energy, clarity, and peace." She shared the small things that had changed her life, planning the night before, using focused time blocks, taking breaks, and reflecting daily. She talked about the Pomodoro technique, her 3-2-1 focus method, and how she learned to say no politely to distractions. When she finished speaking, the room was quiet for a moment. Then one of her coworkers said softly, "That's exactly what I needed to hear." From that day, Emily became known not just for her efficiency, but for her calm and inspiring presence. People began asking her for advice, not about tools or apps, but about habits, motivation, and balance. She realized that sharing what she had learned brought her as much joy as practicing it herself. Helping others stay organized and peaceful made her feel deeply fulfilled. One snowy evening after a long but satisfying day, Emily sat by her window and watched snowflakes drift down under the streetlights. The world looked still, quiet, and pure. She wrapped herself in a blanket and opened her journal. "I used to think success was about achieving everything," she wrote. "Now I know it's about creating space for what matters: work, rest, love, and growth." A meaningful life is not full, it's focused. As she closed her journal, she thought about how far she had come from feeling lost and distracted to living with purpose and clarity. She had learned that productivity was not a goal to reach, but a daily practice, a gentle rhythm of focus and rest, effort and reflection. It wasn't about perfection, but progress, about showing up every day and doing her best with grace and patience. Over the next few months, Emily continued her journey with gratitude. She spent her mornings working, her afternoons learning, and her evenings relaxing or connecting with loved ones. Each day she found small moments of joy: the sound of rain on the window, a kind message from a friend, a good cup of tea. She had learned that productivity wasn't about filling every minute with activity, but about filling life with meaning. One night, as she prepared for bed, Emily looked at her reflection in the mirror and smiled. "You've come a long way," she whispered. She didn't just mean her habits. She meant her heart, her peace, and her confidence. She knew there would still be busy days and setbacks, but she also knew she had built the tools to handle them. With her routines, her reflections, and her steady faith in small progress, she was ready for anything ahead. As she turned off the lights, she whispered her nightly affirmation, "Tomorrow I will live with focus, gratitude, and kindness." Then she closed her eyes, feeling content. Outside, the snow continued to fall gently, covering the world in white, a perfect symbol of her renewed, peaceful mind. Spring returned with soft sunlight, and with it came a renewed energy in Emily's life. Her mornings had become rituals of mindfulness, gentle stretches at 7:00 a.m., a warm cup of tea and a few quiet minutes to breathe before the day began. She had stopped chasing perfection long ago. Now her days were guided by intention, not pressure. She didn't strive to do everything anymore, she simply chose to do enough. One Saturday morning, Emily sat by her window journaling as the sunlight painted golden patterns on her notebook. She reflected on her journey from the days of endless distraction and exhaustion to the life she now lived, calm yet productive. She smiled, remembering how overwhelmed she used to feel. Every day had once felt like a race she couldn't win. But through planning, focus, and patience, she had learned how to slow down and truly live. Later that week, her company invited her to speak at a professional development event about creating productive and balanced work habits. At first, she hesitated. A part of her still doubted if her experience was worth sharing. But then, she remembered how much she had learned from others' stories, and how sharing her own could help someone who felt just like she once did. So she accepted. On the day of the event, Emily stood before a room of colleagues and professionals, her voice calm and steady. She began. "A few years ago, I believed productivity was about speed, about filling every moment with activity. But all it brought me was stress. Over time, I learned that true productivity comes from clarity. It's about aligning your time with your values, taking care of your energy, and forgiving yourself when things don't go as planned." She paused and looked around the room, seeing nods of understanding. "I learned that success is not about working harder, it's about working smarter, resting well, and living meaningfully." She shared how she had created simple routines, setting priorities each morning, using the Pomodoro technique to stay focused, taking mindful breaks and reflecting at night. She spoke of balance, of saying no when necessary, and of finding joy in small progress. "Your worth," she said gently, "is not measured by how busy you are, but by how present you can be in the things that truly matter." When she finished, the audience applauded warmly. Afterward, several people approached her to thank her for the talk. One young woman said quietly, "I needed to hear that. I've been feeling lost just like you described. Maybe I can start changing too." Emily smiled and replied, "You can. Start small, be patient with yourself, and stay consistent." Change always begins with one small step. That evening, as she walked home, Emily felt deeply fulfilled. Not because she had achieved something grand, but because she had shared something real, a piece of her journey that might help others find peace in theirs. Over the next few months, her life continued to flow with purpose. Her mornings remained peaceful, her work focused, and her evenings calm. She no longer measured her worth by completed tasks or deadlines, but by how she felt centered, grateful, and balanced. She had discovered that the true art of productivity was living each day with awareness and compassion, both for herself and others. One warm evening, Emily sat by the window again, watching the golden sunset fade into twilight. She opened her journal and wrote her final reflection on the journey that had changed her life. Being productive is not about doing more, it's about becoming more focused, more grateful, more alive. It's about creating space for joy, learning, and love. The real measure of productivity is peace. She closed her notebook, smiled softly, and whispered, "Thank you for today." Then she leaned back in her chair, letting the quiet fill the room. If you enjoyed this story and found it helpful for your own journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Learn English with Sara. Your support helps us create more inspiring stories to help you learn English and live better every day. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment below and tell us what part of Emily's story inspired you most.